Not sure how you're supposed to also pilot an Udyr in a comp like this as well, because it's going to be difficult to try and wrestle away any of this lane priority that Udyr does value so much.
I think that the biggest power for GEN:G in the early game is going to be in the Orianna Udyr, actually, where you have to threaten Faker. Otherwise, I agree. The Udyr isn't going to have that much power early on, and it feels like the draft has kind of moved away from where it started here for GEN:G in a lot of ways. But I do think that if they can get an early, not even an early advantage, if they don't fall behind early, then they are going to be able to scale up team fights extremely well. They have great initiation. They have insane lockdown. If you get caught as anyone on the side of T1, okay, first person who gets caught gets Lantern. Second person who gets caught is dead almost every time. And if Keria is just unable to Lantern some of these players away, I feel like it's super easy for objective control later on for GEN:G.
Yeah, and look, if Keria is using his Lantern on anyone other than Aphelios, then there should be a way for Clid to just run through and stop the Aphelios from being able to do exactly what he wants. Ornn as well, fantastic with that long-range CC with the Ornn Horn. And this goes back to one of Rascal's picks, right? Before he was the Camille Renekton guy being aggressive in all of his lanes, he was Ornn one-trick for so long. He just loved jumping on this champion, but he's a very different champion to who he used to be, right? It's not going to be quite the same situation, as BDD has paused the game just a little bit, just trying to make sure that everything is all right.
BDD, we were so close to getting into this series. Come on. Hey, it's
right.
the
We'll
best
forgive
time.
you for now.
The best time to have a pause is before the game starts. It's an audio issue we are being told with his headset, so we'll get that sorted out because communication in this 5v5 game is of the utmost importance.
Yep, somewhat important. I wonder how many audio issues we've had so far this season. I wish someone kept count, because
not as many as we've had Cloud Souls.
I mean, that's probably true. That is probably true. But I feel like every time there's an issue, it's something wrong with the headsets. And I think maybe we...
You want to narrow it down to a brand and be like, well, what's going on?
I just feel like we could be looking into how we figure out our audio system, you know? Or maybe it's just really hard to make audio work on a day-to-day basis. I'm not entirely sure.
I mean, usually when teams are playing from home, they have a specific setup that they use, but also, you know, Riot captures all of the audio. That's how we get our really cool open mic checks and stuff like that. So it's a pretty complicated system. And when you're playing on LAN, it's usually just connected to a very complicated system that Riot has done, you know, and we have a really awesome studio here. It's very well equipped for these types of things and has been built that way. Whereas trying to set it for home sometimes gets a little bit more complicated with all the recordings and the wires and what program you're using to connect and making sure Riot can record properly so we have that data. So it's not as simple as like, just restart Discord, bro. Like,
yeah, maybe not quite as plug and play, but desperately wanting to get into this one. You can see Faker. I can see some fire in those eyes, Wolf, and I imagine that if you're a GEN:G fan, you're a little bit frightened for what this team's going to be capable of. I want to go back to what we were discussing before, because I've been sort of one of the main proponents of discussing GEN:G as a team that has a weakness to T1, right? And I did that whilst omitting the World's Gauntlet, and also I think the last best of 3 that they played in the summer regular season. I want to go back to that because that was a very different T1. This is a T1 that felt like they didn't have their cohesion. This was the time when Cuz was struggling a lot, not actually able to sync with his team quite as well as I think a lot of people were expecting, especially for a player that was so good when he was playing for DRX. Like, he really did come into his own. His Gragas was the best in the league and was also meta back at that time. Like, this is a guy that we're expecting a lot from and then just didn't quite work out. Effort was also going through a lot of his struggles and the team wasn't figuring themselves out. So I think it makes sense to sort of forget that era and go back to what made T1 great in spring, because that is what's happening right now. That is the T1 that we're looking at and what GEN:G is looking across the rift to as well at this point in time. So can definitely be possibly a throwback, but also a huge opportunity for GEN:G to say, no. We are the great team that you guys know us of from regular seasons past, and we will be able to do this again.
So we got the confirmation BDD is restarting his computer, which is why you saw his mic, or rather his camera, freeze for just a moment there. But it will be back into the game as soon as that is done. I want to talk about T1 because it feels like there was this really big blemish, right, between the Worlds qualifiers and also summer, right, between last year's summer and now playoffs of spring in 2021. And if you're a T1 fan, you definitely want to delete that tape. You're trying to find the footage. You're trying to make sure it's not archived.
Yeah, they're also still trying to get rid of 2018 as well at the same time.
But like this is a time where I said it earlier this season where I said we don't know the ending of the story yet for T1, but this is going to be a season that fans never forget because of all the rosters we saw, all the changes, all the shuffles. And what it turns out that T1 needed at the end of the day was actually to go back to what worked before. And it's interesting that GEN:G is one of the only teams in the LCK has made almost no changes, right? They have no major changes to their roster. They're starting 5 for the LCK throughout regular season and playoffs. And T1 actually went back to basically GEN:G's strategy. That's what is so ironic about this matchup in the playoff series because GEN:G didn't change anything, and some people were concerned maybe they didn't change enough. Is this team going to be able to make the run? Sure, they'll make playoffs. Will they be able to win the whole thing? T1 did all the experimentation. There was a lot of learning involved. There was a lot of failing as well on the way. And where we ended up is actually basically GEN:G's style. We're going back to what worked before with the addition of Keria. So it is kind of ironic in that sense that T1 actually kind of adopted GEN:G's strategy over a longer period of time with a lot more trials. And I think that's what makes this team stronger than it was even in 2020 spring, though, is all that learning, all the added pressure. I think maybe at some points, some of these players have had some of the lowest points in their careers stress-wise.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think what the end result is something that these players will never forget, and they've gained so much experience that it's crazy. We'll never ever see anything like this again, I don't think, from what we saw from T1 this year. I don't think that the League of Legends community will ever see a roster this much trialed by fire over the course of one season.
I mean, I feel like every T1 roster is trial by fire, right? Just because there are so many eyes glued to this squad. But I think something has to be said for giving these players a break throughout the season, allowing Zeus to come in, allowing Gumayusi to try and bear some of that brunt. Elm and Owner as well coming through and helping out, not to mention Closer. Like, what this does is alleviates some of that stress. It allows Canna to put 3,000 games into Nah in solo queue, right? Because he doesn't have to spend that time scrimming. He can just try and grind and grind and grind, and we've seen the value, right? We've seen his Nah go from what looked like an orange buff to an absolute monster. He hard carried in so many of those games up against Kingin, and actually in that series, DRX were playing so much better than we expected. I think that needs to be reiterated.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a series that actually after the first game, I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually a best of 5 that we need to pay attention to. And all credit goes to DRX for bringing that. But what it did was it brought out a T1 that had to play to their best to win. And even though some of their drafts were definitely iffy, the quality of play from T1 was definitely up there, and I think that Canna deserves so much of the credit for that.
I also feel like we could say that about every team that, you know, you pointed this out so beautifully, and I keep always going back to it. This was one of the easiest brackets you could have ever had to predict, but every team that we had in the L column overperformed, from Nongshim, right,
absolutely,
to DRX, to then second round Hanwha Life Esports, who actually did, you know, put up a fight yesterday. It wasn't an amazing series for them by any means, and there were some questions in the draft, but every team did better than I think analysts predicted them to do, but we still did get that Destiny bracket, right? So once the headsets are on, the headphones are fixed now, and the webcam is back up, we are going to be jumping into the game.
I can see the webcam's on. Yeah, I think it's happening. I think we're almost into the game. We might actually be doing some video games.
Yes,
here, Wolf, which is extraordinarily exciting.
There's a lot of added pressure, actually, you know, going into a pause like this extended before Game 1. If you were in the right zone.
Can we not talk about it? Because, you know, there was a slight delay before a final, maybe in 2020, and I don't want to talk about it. So we're just going to pretend that this didn't happen. And if during, okay, I'm going to do a production shout out here. We need this particular pause to be completely omitted from the VOD. When the VOD is uploaded, it needs to not have this in it, and then maybe that is going to help things.
But we said so many good things, Atlas. People need to know what we said, you know, about these teams and their history with each other.
I mean, I'm sure we'll probably say them again. We've got a few hours in us, Wolf. I think we'll be able to get there. Maybe we can be more succinct as well. I do love hodoring over some of these extraordinarily seasoned matchups that we have, because there are new and old rivalries brewing, right? It used to be the telecom war, KT versus T1. Doesn't really feel like that anymore. This is the big rivalry when it comes to big organizations here, especially from a Western perspective. Just like you mentioned, there is so much more Western influence for both GenG and T1. So I think that there is a little bit more of a connection there. But GenG need to do something to bring themselves back into this matchup, right? Because a rivalry that's one-sided isn't fun at all. But here we go, finally. Onto the rift for T1 versus GenG. T1 will have the blue side. GenG chose red, I believe, moving into this to make sure that they did have the best matchups they could possibly get. That being said, having a look at the drafts now, you might be looking at GenG, wondering whether they thought the game was going to be starting at 20 minutes. Because if it is, then they're going to look real good. And there is so much on Klid's shoulders to put out fires in this game. And it's not what Udyr wants to do. Udyr wants to smash through his jungle, start trying to deny things and play off pressure that his lanes have. And T1, with what they have right now, should be able to get themselves some lane pressure. I think a lot is on BDD as well, because the Victor Orianna matchup can go either way. It'll all be about timings. This is a very interesting way to start things off.
It certainly is. And I think it almost feels like this is a big test for T1 in terms of how much early game control they can get and how they're going to utilize these drafts in the future going to this best of 5. Whereas GenG started things off with a very different idea than where they ended, right? You know, we saw finally the last pick Ornn to go all in on the scaling and going for that later game here. And it does feel like a no-rush comp for sure. I think the only lane where you have kill pressure is in the mid lane with the Udyr. Otherwise, as you said, it's going to be a more defensive setup, absolutely, for Klid in this game. And if he can run around and put out fires and actually stabilize GenG as being even, or, you know, if something bad happens for T1, if there's a mistake ahead going into that 20-minute mark, then GenG are going to have a very huge advantage. I'm curious to see how this bot lane goes, because this is a tale of very much two different styles of the same concept.
Yeah.
You know, scaling champions here that work very well with Thresh, work very well with Tahm Kench. We've seen Tahm Kench be kind of the Thresh replacement since it's been banned from so many drafts. And I think it's really just going to be about performance here on the day for these 4 players.
Very interested to see how Carrier is going to perform. This has been one of his best champions as he misses a hook. That is beautifully cast cursed by myself. I apologize. Well, but his Thresh has been exceptional throughout this this season. We saw the stats at the bottom of your screen. Over 70% win rate is Cuz. Look, these Raptors can get angry. Talk to Piotrek about it. But of course, he's Olaf. He's absolutely fine. Wants to be as low as possible. As BDD now down to 200. And Faker having a real good time. So far, this matchup has been very, very even. Like we said before. But not looking very even in the mid lane right there, as Faker doesn't have very much mana. So a possibility for BDD to make it back in and start trying to return the shove.
He also still has Corrupting Pot and Cookie. So there's Cookie left. Once he has that eaten up, he's going to be fine. He's just going to sit back and play it passively. If Faker tries to really push the issue here, he does put himself under threat of being ganked by this Udyr. And he knows the timing of this too, because he knows Udyr is actually going to be taking the scuttle here. So he can actually go up, get that ward on the Raptors with this extra pressure that he has in the mid lane. It doesn't overextend. Very well played here by Faker so far.
But this is what we were talking about, right? Like, Faker should be able to farm quicker earlier against the Orianna. We know that her lane control late is definitely much better, but ramps up.
Here comes Klid.
As, yep, Klid's going to wrap around from behind. He's going for carrier here. Of course, you can't lantern yourself as the flame chompers are avoided. Teddy actually, though, not able to get onto the lantern, and he's just gobbled up by Life, who will say thank you so much for the first blood. The crab ray from Klid as he takes down his former teammate.
You know, in this moment, T1 actually had 2 extremely pushed lanes. They had mid pushed, where Faker was able to interrupt here. Interrupt on the channel, interrupt on my color point, but you know, they had that mid lane push, and it felt like T1 was so focused on getting value, that extra ward, and Faker was stepping back, and it felt like that was the place where T1 felt most vulnerable. They did not realize that Klid could wrap around their ward they have on the brush there in the river, take the long path, and then get that kill. Because they had that warded, they felt safe, but it was a really easy punish there. We'll watch it again. Look at the map here. Look at where Faker is standing, and look at where that ward is on the river. Klid goes all the way around, and they just have no idea this is coming. Way overextended, and it's just a really easy cleanup from here. Teddy is chain CC'd, and there's nothing Keria could do for him.
Yeah, body blocking Lantern as well was really clever there from GenG. However, I thought that, you know, Teddy had an opportunity to take it a little bit earlier, but Carrier holding onto his flash, not actually using that in order to create extra distance so that Teddy could have then pressed the button. So maybe that was what they were waiting for, just didn't quite get their opportunity. Definitely a great start here for GenG though, and if they can continue to play like this, then like this is already like a hard outscale in the draft, right? So getting that kill is even more valuable.
And it just feels like, you know, where T1 are trying to get this extra strength in the bottom lane might be a little bit overzealous, right? I mean, if you end up getting caught a second time, then things, I mean, the game could just end basically. So you have to be really careful here. A lot of extra warding from Clid. You know, in this early game, as you mentioned, he has to play kind of defensively, generally speaking. The fact that he got, you know, helped get a kill at all is pretty insane at this stage, and he is able to clear away a lot of that vision. And you're always kind of scared of Olaf trying to take an early Drake, so this is what GenG is posturing around right now. They spot the Olaf, he clears the ward, and they just do not want T1 to have the opportunity to try to double objective, get the Drake early to then try to turn that into a Rift Herald advantage. That goes wide.
Yeah, and we've also got Cuz going back now as well, almost conceding control of this bottom side as Carrier finds an auto, not actually looking for a hook just yet, as Cuz just happy feeding, waiting for his Krug camp to come off cooldown.
And this is an opportunity for an early Drake for GenG, in fact, as Rascal is looking for some extra damage. But look at this, like, you know, versus an Olaf, you don't get this advantage all too often, but with GenG having the opportunity here to clear vision with the Udyr pick, there's just no way that you can safely come over and deal with this as T1. They didn't have bot priority, and now Cuz is here.
Yep, Life is going to flash. He had flash, he had cleanse, and he's able to use the cleanse now to get out of the hook as, yeah, Clid's going to come on over, but GenG, the bottom lane doesn't actually require him. They do manage to get both of the summoner spells out of the Tahm Kench, definitely very valuable there, but Ruler still has heal, still has flash, they still have safety in this lane.
Yeah, they certainly do. And unfortunately, T1 aren't able to turn this Drake take into a punish, right? So Clid gets away with it. They're able to get an early advantage here. And now T1 can't use this Olaf pick to get that double. Oh, Faker.
Yeah, shockwave from BDD. Gravity field goes down. That's going to block BDD from getting on through. But he nails the cannon minion. And Jonah Strong definitely going to be very, very happy with the fact that not very many cannons have been missed so far this series. Certainly a good sign. As, yeah, Faker and BDD, a tale as old as time between these two. 3 CS. Between them, just showing how close this matchup is.
Yeah. And
will come down to a lot of lane manipulation and the jungle, of course, to see what is actually going to happen.
And speaking of the jungle, I mean, if he was able to get, I think this is best case scenario for Faker, considering the shockwave goes off. Like, if he had to flash there, you know, to survive, like if he was a little bit lower on health, then the follow-up kill potential is really high when BDD's next shockwave comes up and you have Clid coming in. So the fact that Faker is able to prevent himself from using flash there and still get out is pretty massive for potentially those ganks to come through later.
Oh yeah, especially with the Herald coming up as well.
Yep.
This is going to be the big fight that we're looking out for. You saw Carrier already just making a bit of a movement up there. GenG do have vision of the area, but we're not actually jockeying for position on that particular objective just yet. Top side as well, going very, very well. Ornn does have, you know, the ability to deny CC, so Cast can be Bellowsed Breath pretty comfortably for the Ornn.
Yeah.
So it does help him in the matchup. Gragas should, of course, have a lot more early shove. But Ornn is one of these champions that has suffered quite a few nerfs, so isn't quite as oppressive as he used to be, but still does manage to warp games. As T1 going to come on over, Shelly is going to get started. And with the fact that there was priority on the top side of the map, this should just go over to them. As you can see, Teddy's still actually farming on the bottom side pretty comfortably as well. And it looks like GenG might just be a bit late to the party.
Yeah, GenG have to commit if they're going to pull out of the bot lane. I mean, you can't just let this go and also let Teddy free farm. They're being a little bit indecisive, but they are going to take the engage now.
Actually, Rascal moving on over here. You can see Carrier getting there a little bit late as the Phalanx has been set up here by GenG. And Shelly's not going to releash. The barrel going to miss as in goes the Ornn Horn. Does get a couple of knockups as Faker can take himself a lantern, but he says no. He wants to just get damage here onto GenG. And
Teddy's coming up.
Yeah, T1 have taken it back, but Shelly did reset. Now Ruler's turn to come on through. Super Mega Death Rocket at the ready here.
This is basically a ring around the rosy here for GenG. They're not able to take the Herald themselves, but they can deny it multiple times here from T1.
Yeah, getting control of these chokes as well is just so easy for BDD at the same time. He's got that shockwave at the ready. There is no Ornn Horn, but He did manage to take down the Herald. Let's see whether any of these kills do come down. In a little bit of trouble is the Olaf as the eye is taken. 3-man Shockwave from BDD is huge, but now Rascal out of position. Super Mega Deathrocker body blocked by Carrier, cuz would have been very, very close to taking him down there, as it is going to be secured by GEN:G. I actually missed seeing who managed to pick that one up, but it's Life that goes over and collects it.
It's Life, yeah, who takes it, but it was really well played by GEN:G. And GEN:G did a lot of really cool things in this exchange, right? I mean, I guess we might not really get a replay of it because it was not that bloody of a fight. But
of course we will.
It's a fight where GEN:G had a lot of vision manipulation. They sent Ruler back to lane, but they sent him actually away from vision. They didn't send him through the river, they sent him on the safe path. So T1 had to back off of the Herald the first time because they thought, well, we can't just leave Teddy in the bot side and then 4v5. So they backed away, you got the reset, then you see the rejoin from Ruler, and he's in much better position to actually help contest. The Shockwave was pretty amazing there from BDD as well at the end to help them get away safely.
Yeah.
So bloodless take here, but it's very much GEN:G playing the macro game extremely well. They get away with both objectives early, and this is not what we should be saying about their comp. You called it a no-rush 20 comp.
Yeah.
The fact that they have this much of a lead and this much control early on is very concerning.
Yeah, and it's not like, you know, T1 are all in on early game. I mean, they are as far as the jungle is concerned, but they do have a lot of scaling themselves. It's not ludicrous.
Yeah.
However,
I mean, they have a Victor Aphelios.
however, when you factor in like Jinx, Orianna, Ornn, I mean, if you can't call that a late game comp, then I don't know what you
Their late
can,
game is stronger, right? GEN:G's definitely has a stronger late game. I think most would agree.
Yeah.
With the Ornn in particular.
But it's like if you take scaling light into ultra scaling, it does get rough. As ultra
Here's Clint.
rated, yeah,
Clint's here.
going to come on through. He's got the flash, and Fake is going to answer instantly with his own.
And remember that flash I talked about earlier that Faker knew it was coming. He's so smart.
Super mega maybe rocket.
Remember when I said Faker didn't use his flash earlier? You know, if it's not there in this case, he dies, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's
100%.
what I'm talking about. Like the kill pressure in the mid lane is so scary. Victor into Orianna when there's an Udyr there on the field, because he would just rip through that the last part of that health bar so easily. But it was very well handled by Faker. He does lose his flash, of course, and then the next Drake is up, and GEN:G are just taking this early game one step at a time so brilliantly every single set play. If they can take this advantage into the late game, we might have them taking the first game in this series.
Not to mention, we will not have a Cloud Soul as well. It's going to be a mountain. Certainly, that is the GEN:G
Ornn is
right there.
So happy with that.
So is Clid, and so is Life. Like,
and so is everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. This is definitely a big deal if GEN:G are able to stack up a couple and get themselves towards the Soul.
So
T1 can also utilize it. They have the Thresh, Olaf, and Gragas that are going to be pretty tanky as the game goes on.
And this is not a coincidence that the Shockwave is committed to right before this moment. Faker has to flash, they get extra mid prio.
Yep.
And this happens right before the Drake comes up. You have that small of an advantage. It actually snowballs into a massive opportunity for GEN:G, and they're able to take this away. And now they have a 2 Drake advantage with the extra Rift Herald, so they're going to have that extra gold that comes with that too. And T1 have kept the gold fairly even. I mean, this is a 0.4 gold difference between you can see in the graph. Like, the graph makes it look crazy, but it's very small. Yeah. But here comes the Herald. Some extra plate gold going to go here into the mid lane. And GEN:G are in such a fantastic position. If they can keep taking these plays into objectives, I just don't see how T1 can recover unless they make a really big stand here on this first Mountain Soul, or Drake rather. It's going to be Soul Point for GEN:G. I mean, I think that's where you have to take your stand as T1. If you fail, though, you're going to be in a world of hurt against the scaling.
Yeah. I mean, T1 have showed that they can just outplay you, right? Despite composition, they've had many comps worse than this and still managed to find victories. But they haven't had early games that have sort of fallen away from them. And we keep talking about it, like, you look at the top of the screen, you're like, but Atlas, it's like 500 gold. This game is like really close. What are you talking about? But I mean,
it's not as close as the gold graph shows.
Yeah, it's this is GEN:G coasting. This is GEN:G getting their no rush, which is exactly what they want.
Yeah, it's really a very concerning thing that, you know, unfortunately T1 don't have the agency in this game, and Olaf in a lot of ways just feels like in some of these comps and with how these games play out, a worse version of Udyr, a worse version of Hecarim in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it basically is, right?
And that's what's concerning about the the priority that we saw here, you know, in the draft for T1. And the Udyr works so well defensively, as you pointed out, but you have threat in the mid lane. And Victor is one of these champions that you pick for scaling, but when GEN:G go all in on scaling, it doesn't feel as good anymore.
Yeah.
And when he's being threatened and unable to join these early team fights, it just feels real bad for T1. The Drake advantage means that GEN:G too, if they do end up losing a team fight in these upcoming next objective fights, they have kind of a buffer zone where they're still going to be okay. Whereas T1 doesn't really have options to give up Drakes anymore. They have to fight.
Yeah, I think they can give away one more maybe, but if they give away Soul, like, it's feeling real Dunzo as Kuz going to run on forward. Strikebreaker utilized in a very early Ragnarok, but 2 versus 3, they were never really going to get too much done there. And you can see Rascal just continuing to be absolutely fine in this matchup.
Yeah. And look at, I mean, when you make a play like that as GEN:G, worst case scenario, you're going to force either Kuz's ultimate, you might get Faker's flash, and if you get a kill, you get the tower, you know, you get the whole turret. And it's not like they sent Ruler. He's still free farming on the bottom side. You're forcing T1 to make defensive plays and rotate around the map while also losing nothing. GEN:G have taken this comp that scales really well, but have utilized it as an early to mid-game comp so extremely well that they have always in this game such an inherent tempo advantage. Speaking of which, now they are able to rotate over to the Rift Herald, look for a second one here. And T1 just can't really easily get over here to deny this. They're caught in an awkward back timing.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I don't know what GEN:G are going to be able to do here to, what T1 are going to be able to do here to try and stem the bleeding, right? Because they need to get this game moving in their direction, and they need to do so extraordinarily quickly. Rift Herald could be an opportunity for that. And, you know, some item timings have come in. You have the Leandries picked up on Faker. He's got his Mythic together, and that cannot be said so much for BDD, who may have to look for a reset before they do go for any of these fights. We do have the Frostfire Gauntlet to come through from Rascal, and these ornaments are not far away.
Yeah,
that's
really
when
not.
you start really seeing these two teams, you know, drift apart when it comes to, you know, the gold difference, because the amount of value that you get from those items is so high.
And also, too, if GEN:G get this Mountain Soul, then it's going to be much more difficult to pick a target with a cask, for example, in a team fight. Whereas the Ornhorn is always going to be extreme value, even in terms of its ability to zone and help peel for Ruler's Jinx to pop off. She's going to have, you know, an Ornn ornament later on, too. GEN:G lost vision control over this Drake, which is extremely critical. T1 were able to take that away, bring that reset. So this is actually pretty massive. T1 have a great opportunity to force this fight on their terms for the first time in this game.
Kuz standing at the front, you've got Rascal in pretty good horn position as Ruler out of the fight for the moment. And T1 are going to start this one up. Ruler now just going to move on over with the rest of his team. Gets through unscathed as another control ward goes down. GEN:G have picked up the aggro, and you can feel just how much both of these teams know the importance of this position. In comes the Ram, looking for Kuz, who does throw down the Ragnarok, but no way can he get into position. And T1 are going to give it away. You can see they were like, nope, it's a little too dangerous. Losing a fight here would be catastrophic.
Yeah.
We have to give it up.
And that's why it feels lose-lose for T1 in this game, Atlas, because you give up the Drake here. That's a massive advantage for GEN:G. They're on Soul Point now, and if you try and lose the fight, then you lose the game like at that moment, right? But now it feels like you're just losing the game slower. But I think it was the right call to back off. I mean, the Ornhorn
They had
alone,
to, right? Yeah.
The Ornhorn alone just makes it so you can't even attempt to contest, and that's the power. Even before we get to the Supreme Late game of Ornn in these 5v5 fights. And GEN:G might not have been in a position to actually force this fight on their terms if they were behind earlier. They just have been so stable and so slightly ahead in every tempo occasion. They're in a good way. Now, Teddy's getting a lot of value here, by the way. A lot of extra gold going to this Aphelios in bot lane.
I mean, look at the top lane. Same thing's happening on the other side. So trading evenly, it's absolutely not what you can really do, right? Because GEN:G just look like they have this composition that should be able to cruise towards easier and easier team fights in the later stages of the game, and barring, like, a miracle.
Yeah,
T1, right?
I agree, and Atlas too. This is against what we've been seeing from T1 a lot of the season is taking a really strong, aggressive draft and taking a tempo advantage. And it feels like when,
well, I mean, like, it's not a tempo draft necessarily, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just less scaling than what GEN:G has.
Yeah, and they seem to not be able to force fights in these situations where they're trading down a chess piece basically in this game.
Yeah.
And if you do this for too long, when you're also down 3 Drakes, you're going to have a very serious problem ahead. And it feels like procrastination almost here for T1. But the more you think about what T1 could do proactively, when you look at their comp, they don't have great options. It's an Olaf who has no kills and no assists early on. You don't have a comp that can actually be proactive realistically here. So it's a big problem.
It feels like not anymore. As Teddy's going to pick up a lantern, move back towards this mid lane. Mid control is looking to be where it's at as we tick over to 20 minutes. I don't think either of these teams are going to be taking any Barons anytime soon. I think the next fight is going to be in 2.5 minutes.
Yep.
When this Mountain Soul is available for GEN:G, and T1 wanting to deny it. Hook going to go wide. Under Clid there, who's very, very fast and is pretty capable. They have face checking right now.
They have forced so many early Ragnaroks out of Cuz too in some of these skirmishes, and had they forced one there, I think it could have been a push to actually drop the Rift Herald, but they are fairly conservative here instead. And remember, they still have this second Rift Herald, which they can use upcoming here to get that extra Drake prio. That's sometimes what the Rift Herald, the second one, is used for, is actually just a little bit of extra control around the objective. It doesn't give you as much gold because the plates are down by that time of the game.
No, but it gives you shove in a lane.
Exactly.
And I think you're exactly right. Certainly could be an opportunity. We'll see whether it's actually going to be up at the right time. I think it might be just
it's a little off, I think.
A little bit too early, yeah. As Rascal does tidy up the Gromp, and we'll just move back to being ahead in lane by about 10 CS right now. At this point in time, it's more just a statement of how this game has gone rather than how the lanes have gone, because of course 21.5 minutes, it's not really laning phase anymore. But
this feels like the old days of LCK, right? A 22-minute
it's
one kill
old
game.
GEN:G, right? Yeah. This is exactly what it is. The team that felt inevitable, the team that played so boring, but was always able to find these late games, and teams weren't punishing them, right?
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, if you're T1, you do get a little panicked, right? I mean, not T1 in particular, but teams in this similar situation might feel the need to fight. And
no, but they have that need. That need is there.
Yeah,
it's not fake. It's real.
Yeah, and I think T1 have actually shown really great discipline, even though they are getting choked out of this game. It feels like T1's game plan is to take one really big decisive fight when they see an opportunity. They're waiting for a big mistake out of GEN:G, and it's not proactive play, and it might cost them this first game, but I think given the situation, it's correct, because if you make one wrong move, the game literally will end. You cannot recover if you lose one team fight as T1, so you just have to wait for opportunities, and their comp just doesn't have great initiation to set up for it. A cask isn't going to be enough, especially if they give up this Drake. And I mean, the Rift Herald is going to be at that timing right now where they can try to push it through. It's not going to, it'll be just destroyed instantly, but it's going to give them a slight edge here.
But I mean, all of this tussling, I mean, you guys might meme about the K-Ram and things like that. Control of the mid lane is so important. Clid puts down the Rift Herald at the last possible second, and now Shirley is going to help them be able to move into this river,
I love
grab the control that they can get.
He pushes it at the back, so it actually is the most threatening with the wave. So they actually have to respond to this T1 do instead of just pushing at the front. It gets a charge even, because T1 cannot give up this position.
Yeah, Faker's actually there just to try and tidy it up, but now it's a 5 versus 4 here in theory. See whether Faker can get over in time. Body slam onto Rascal. Gonna get knocked up though is Canna. Takes some rocks, able to utilize his stopwatch to avoid the shockwave, and now no shockwave is a huge deal.
That's a great trade for T1, but isn't enough. Baker's going for a huge flank here.
Yep, Call of the Forge God is available. Clid felt something in his waters. Spots Faker going for the slight flank, and now he's looking to close in. We'll see where GEN:G are going to put themselves in this particular moment.
I love the harass coming through from Faker here on the left side. He's just out of range of getting picked, and now T1 have reset the Drake, and they actually have priority here. Look at where Kana is. He's in such a great spot. This is beautiful from T1.
Yeah, we'll see whether he can actually blast cone over. As you can see, he's going to get tongue lashed as now Clid getting on in there, not going to be able to find the smite. Now they have thrown his life away. The Devour is going to be available as Teddy. The close range weapons are so scary. The cast comes out, but the blast cone keeps Rascal alive after the flash.
This fight from T1 was exactly what I'm talking about. You play safe, you wait for a mistake, you wait for an opportunity. The shockwave was GEN:G's best tool of wrestling that control away. They stopwatch it, they push in forward, they put Faker on the left side there because they know that GEN:G cannot commit to chase him, or they're going to lose the Drake no matter what. And I think you're willing to give Faker's life for that exchange if you have to, but they don't have to. Faker pushes the envelope so hard on the left side of that flank there to do that extra damage, while meanwhile Kana gets control of the top, gets set for a cask. That was so well played from T1. And again, it's a killless fight, but they're able to wrestle control of the Drake away. And T1 is so good at these high pressure situations. I'm very impressed with how they handled that.
No, it was well played. No Call of the Forge God actually used. GEN:G just didn't find themselves with the coordination to actually make that one work. And also fighting into Teddy with Crescendum Severum would have been very, very frightening. I was like watching his Calibrum ammo go down, and I was thinking, oh, what does he have next? Of course, Teddy knows, and he utilizes it, gets towards that Severum, and then the pile-in feels so much worse because he's completed his Runans. The AoE damage close range is so frightening, and GenG don't want to fight like that, right? They want to be able to fight front to back with Ruler utilizing the range advantage. And it felt like that wasn't going to be the case in that particular moment.
GenG are still ahead in this game, and we're still heading towards a longer game because obviously this has kind of slowed down the tempo of the game in a lot of ways, but T1 just could not afford to give that Drake up. But GenG still have control of this mid lane. They're still now controlling vision on this Baron. They have a comp that can clear vision so easily with this Udyr pick. So this is T1 taking one baby step, right?
Yeah.
It's 2 steps forwards and 1 step back, almost it feels like, in this game for them. But you're going to have to see a lot more of this from T1 if they're going to come back and win this game because, yeah, again, less than 1,000 gold lead. It's 500 gold lead right now, but the 3 Drakes cannot be ignored. And the scaling that we've talked about, we've beaten to death, in this cast, is just a huge factor. It's an elephant in the room. This Kana's not going to get this, sadly.
I actually think it's not bad of GenG just to give up that Drake, right?
Yeah.
They realized they didn't have optimal positioning, and like, just don't.
And that's
wait until you get all of the ornaments, right?
Yeah.
Wait until your Kraken Demolisher is online, your Chem Tank is well and truly fueled up.
And that's what the 3 Drake advantage gives you, right? Is that extra buffer. So, you get the opportunity to threaten it if T1 actually overextend, you win the game. If they take the Drake, you just walk away. They have the complete control over every aspect of this game right now. T1 are just trying to pick up the pieces. The stopwatch play for the Shockwave was what
that was beautiful.
Essentially
really well done.
The Drake. Yeah.
But I mean, I just don't know whether it's going to be enough as GenG once again shove out this mid lane, take control of the river. Now going for a bit of a reset here. Life actually makes it back, grabs himself a couple of control wards as, oh my goodness.
Just barely
Sometimes you're just okay, I guess.
Yeah, this keeps happening with these backs in the LCK. Valdez and I had a wonky one the other day with the shield coming through.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't get the interrupt. Nope. Don't think they would have gotten the kill there, but it would have been nice to slow that down.
Oh, staggering backs is actually a huge deal around these Baron fights. It's 100% right.
Look at the Ornn ornaments starting to come through. Now you have Leandri's Ultimate Depression or whatever it's called.
I think it's Leandri's Lament.
Lament, yes.
I think it might be. But I mean, it's just this. You go through a thesaurus, add Leandri's to the front, and say something sad at the end. That's all 3 of the Leandri's items that have existed. So.
And, as a Sea of Thieves guy, I always call the Kraken Slayer the Megalodon Slayer when we get that upgraded. That's online here now. Like, GenG have the pieces of the puzzle. Like, we're starting to hit that late game where we were talking about what the late game, but the late game, but the late game. But, I mean, we are there now.
Yeah, no, it's happened.
It's happened, and GenG have the tools they need to actually crush a front-to-back team fight. And T1 are going to have to try to find one way or the other. But if you make just one mistake against this composition, you get wiped. Full wipe means end of the game.
Oh, absolutely. We are certainly at that territory. The Drake's going to be spawning in 30 seconds. GenG at the moment, just milling about mid.
This is the fight T1 have to take. And it's going to be one of many they have to take. But they have to take it in some miraculous way, just like the last one. Klid's looking for Faker. I love Faker's positioning so far. He's always on the flank, drawing Klid's attention away. And he can get a lot of harassed on if he gets away with it.
They do manage to get the Banshee's Veil out of BDD.
If they can find BDD, if he gets cast, I mean, that's one way you win this fight. To get the Banshee's Veil, as you mentioned.
We'll see whether T1 are actually just looking for a trade. They could potentially run at the Baron. There is Severum Crescendum. This is real rough. Ruler's going to go over and try and solo this one out. And we'll see whether GenG can play enough defense.
This is so scary here for GenG to actually split this up.
Super Mega Death Rocket flying on towards the Baron, Cuz taking a fair bit of damage here. Baron down to about 1,000, and it is secured by T1, but now the fight is on. Rascal doesn't find too much value there, but the Jinx takes down the Aphelios. Olaf, of course, is going to die, and GenG get Mountain Soul, give up Baron, but now 2 kills. Will this mean a broken base as Kana is running for the hills? The very terrified Yuumi is exactly how I would be feeling in that circumstance as well as Klid comes on over. They're looking to try and stagger this one out.
Even the
BDD comes
teleport.
over, and yeah, I just don't think that he's going to stand much of a chance here.
And
No more
T1,
stopwatch.
they were able to take the Baron, but they weren't able to group on it. And you saw the massive damage coming through onto Cuz there from the Super Mega Death Rocket.
Yeah.
Which is very difficult to say.
I mean, like the Ziggs Jinx combo, just Mega Inferno Bomb, Super Mega Death Rocket, like, there's too many.
Watch this though. T1 are not fully grouped. Faker isn't here, and you see that Kana is on the edge. He's trying to deny them from taking the Baron away, but I think he should have probably been on the bottom side of the fight, trying to make sure they don't get wiped. Like, Teddy is in a Baron pit by himself, and when he's done, this fight is done. And sure, you get the Baron, you trade it here, but the fact that GEN:G were so proactive about getting in there and trying to cut them off, preventing Faker from getting in, is why this play worked. I thought GEN:G was actually taking a huge risk in this because they could have actually just forced the fight on their terms 5v5, and the split gave T1 the opportunity to take a 5v3, but it just didn't work out because Faker couldn't rotate in. Kana was more on deny duty than peel duty, and Teddy just was instantly blown up. And GEN:G now 4-0 in this game. They have the Mountain Soul. And sure, Baron buff, you've got it, but it's a negative power play. And it feels like GEN:G just have the keys to the Nexus at this stage.
Yeah, that is 50 gold that has their name written on it right now. That being said, it being GEN:G's game to win doesn't mean that things are 100% impossible, but it is getting more and more difficult. I just want to say, this is the best I've seen BDD play into Faker in a really long time, even including that series that they managed to win in the qualifier. Sometimes there's just this thing that Faker has that BDD can't seem to shake, right? Ever since, you know, BDD did have that one series back on Longzhu where things were fantastic, but since then, hasn't really felt the same.
Yeah,
and he's been so good this game.
He really has. I mean, there are certain memories that every player will have, and there are certain moments that, you know, some people never recover from. I mean, ask Ryu how he feels about the Zed versus Zed blind pick game. I'm sure every time that highlight plays,
I feel too uncomfortable.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to ask him.
I'm sure when he hears Doa's casting, because I'm sure he's even heard that. Like, it echoes through his memory. But I mean, there are some players that just are bad matchups against others. But in this case, it doesn't feel that way. BDD has handled this game so extremely well, and it's a 4-kill game. It's a 4-kill game at 32 minutes and 20 seconds here. And it's just been GEN:G having such an early tempo advantage with a comp that scales better, and against a comp that has no agency to initiate and try to stop this runaway train that's off the rails now. Yeah. And GEN:G with all this extra shielding makes it even more difficult for T1 to potentially pick someone. They have such a great front line. It just feels like in this game, GEN:G are so inevitable. T1 have no options here. They're going to hope for another team fight, but that's all they've got. That's their one last chance on this Elder Tree.
But I mean, even if that happens, right, like Mountain Soul, Ornn that's given literally everything away possible outside of the Chem Tank upgrade, and of course, the newly completed item for life in his Sunfire Aegis. He's finally got that one as well. Like, this game just, like, the power level, like, you can see it's like a 3,000 gold lead, right? But with all of the ornaments that are now put together, it's like an extra, what, 4,000 odd gold in stats. Mountain Soul, add another 4,000 odd gold in stats.
It's like a Tom Kinch comp too, like, who are you gonna get?
Yeah, yeah, and then also factor in the champions at this stage of the game, and maybe that equates to like a 6,000 gold advantage. So now when you see T1 fighting back, like, it's not what is 3,000 at the top of the screen. It feels more like 15.
And there's been a huge talk of, okay, well, maybe this is Dominant not looking as dominant as last year. A lot of people have been saying that. LCK looks like a one-team region.
No one's saying that after yesterday, my dude.
I hope not. But, I mean, look, this is our other semifinal here, and these two teams are almost so perfect that, you know, like, this is such a low-kill game. And the fact that T1 have had the real conservative play slow nature here and have not panicked means that they still have a chance in this game, because if they fail any other panicked attempt to deny a Drake, for example, they lose a long time ago. Like, the Nexus would be down, or GEN:G would have a 10,000 gold lead right now, and we'd be just, you know, playing off, you know, T1 here. But they still have a chance in this game because they still have one 5v5 team fight where, yes, they are behind, yes, the ornaments are up, and yes, the Mountain Soul is there. But there's still a chance. The fact that we can say that, I think, is testament alone to T1, their fortitude in this first game in this best of 5.
GEN:G just haven't been making their characteristic mistakes that they often do into T1. They haven't been acting on the pressure. They've been playing patient. They've been playing back. They've read their composition, understood their win conditions, and played towards them. And that's continuing to happen right now. They are ripe for a caster curse, and I want to apologize if that does happen, as Hook going to go wide onto Rascal.
I mean, look at T1's positioning here. How will they ever close in on this Drake? GENN.G probably shouldn't overextend here, though.
Yeah, Rascal actually is going to go golden. Tries to start this one as Moonlight Vigil actually going to get trolled a little bit there by Canna's Cars. And the health bars on T1 go down low, but no one is actually taken out. Also, not a lot of R buttons down, as it's only Super Mega Death Rocket that's been picked up. That's not one of the CCs that they require. As watch the orb, watch BDD's power in this fight as T1 have been torn apart. Canna now off towards the side, and Ruler does so much damage with all the items he's put together. 4,000 already in this fight.
You chip the health, you get your shield back. That's what GENN.G is doing here, but T1 have handled this so well. They're actually getting Drake priority right now on the Elder Drake. Teddy, where are you going?
Oh, what is that? Don't face check, no! Well, he does take the Lantern, survives for the moment. Now Lantern on cooldown, the Elder has been pulled out. Rift Scuttler is going to fall immediately. As Rascal down to 50%. Canna off towards the side. Finally shown on vision as Faker flashes before the Lantern comes out. Now both on cooldown for the moment.
Rascal has to play back now. He's going to have to teleport back in. T1 now or never.
Oh my goodness, the Super Mega Death Rocket. That means the bottom lane are out of this one. There is no way T1 can fight his Elder Drake for GENN.G. War of Attrition won by the red team.
And that might just be game here, Atlas. You can see Abyssal Voyage forward. They want to catch Kana. He has to ult out. But the base is about to be unlocked.
Yeah, BDD didn't actually know which way he wanted to go. The first missed shockwave for him is going to get a flash, and Canna is going to survive.
And this is going to be a Baron easily here for GENN.G. They get a pick or two there. They can just walk down the red carpet. But this Baron buff is going to roll it out for them. They're going to have all waves pushing. Even Rascal goes topside here after the reset and is going to be able to get that lane pressured. But you can see GENN.G, their composition also struggles to have insane engage outside of the shockwave. But this is a fight for T1 that they're just fighting with half health bars on their main carry because he base checked moments before. The Super Mega Death Rocket comes through here and just forces them out.
Oh, Faker, no! What? That's the brush he got caught in to lose the 92-minute game!
Oh, no. Well,
oh, God, no.
Some memories coming back, Atlas.
Yeah.
GENN.G trying to make some new memories in this best of 5. And that is almost certainly going to be the last nail in the coffin here, as we're going to watch this one more time. Just extremely far forward here is Faker. And for what?
Yeah, it's so
That's
strange.
so peculiar. I mean, they had a Lantern nearby, but why make this choice? Didn't even drop a ward, wasn't even clearing vision.
The thing that's really difficult, right, is that T1 are actually, like, they've missed their windows. Their windows were very narrow this game, composition-wise, but they've missed them. So that is not that egregious, but that is a huge uncharacteristic mistake for Faker, as Nexus turret number 1 is going to go down. BDD flashes forward, gets another flash for his shockwave. Ornhorn does go a little bit wide there as Canna breaks up the fight, but Rascal looks basically unkillable. Just goes in and solos Teddy. Now Carrier and Canna have no damage. Faker finally turns up, but Ruler is an absolute monster. Carrier comes on in, that's a very angry dragon, and the Nexus will fall. GENN.G take game number 1, and we've got one hell of a best of 5 on our hands.
And it's a game of inches